Hello, I'm Catherine Garahanga. This is the Iran War Today, our daily briefing, bringing you up to date with all you need to know on day 79 of the US-Israel war with Iran. Let's start with some of today's key developments. The United Arab Emirates has condemned a drone attack on a nuclear power plant in Abu Dhabi, calling it a dangerous escalation. Israel continues strikes on Lebanon, targeting the east and south of the country despite a fragile ceasefire. BBC Verify has been investigating Hezbollah's use of small drones controlled by fibre optic cables to evade and attack Israeli targets. Iran asks its Speaker of Parliament to oversee the country's relations with China. Already, Iran's chief negotiator with the US will examine the rising prominence of Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf. Iran's state media says the US has failed to make any concrete concessions in its latest response to Iran's proposals to restart peace talks. President Trump has posted that for Iran, the clock is ticking. Now, the United Arab Emirates has condemned a drone attack on a nuclear power plant in Abu Dhabi, calling it a dangerous escalation. The Foreign Ministry described it as a terrorist attack, saying the UAE reserved the right to respond, including militarily. The authorities said they were investigating who launched the drone. The UAE has previously accused Iran of attacking its infrastructure. The drone hit an electrical generator, causing a fire at its Barakah nuclear energy plant. No one was reported injured. The head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog, Rafael Grossi, has also condemned the attack. His organization said radiation levels at the plant remained normal. More on this later in the program with our BBC Persian correspondent, Kazra Naji. Hezbollah has increased its use of small first-person view drones to attack Israel, including systems controlled by fibre optic cables to evade sophisticated defences. BBC Verify has geolocated 35 videos shared by the Lebanese armed group since the 26th of March, which show strikes on Israeli soldiers, armoured vehicles and air defence systems in southern Lebanon and northern Israel. The use of cheap FPV drones has become widespread during the Russia-Ukraine war and has changed modern warfare. Israeli strikes targeted eastern and southern Lebanon on Sunday, state media reported, despite a fragile ceasefire. A Hezbollah lawmaker called Lebanon's negotiations with Israel a dead end. Israeli attacks since the start of the war have killed more than 2,900 people in Lebanon, including more than 400 since the truce began on April the 17th, according to Lebanese authorities. The latest strikes come after envoys from Israel and Lebanon held a third round of negotiations in Washington and agreed to extend the ceasefire. Dennis Ross served as the Middle East peace envoy under Presidents George Bush and Bill Clinton. He shared his views with the BBC on the ceasefire in Lebanon.
It's very much tied to what happens with Iran. Prime Minister Netanyahu cannot say no to President Trump. The reason there's even a limited ceasefire, and I say limited because it seems to be more limited by location than the fact of it, is because the president insisted on it. So long as the conflict with Iran is not resolved, the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah and Lebanon is not going to be resolved.
Well, let's now speak to BBC Arabic's Rami Ruhaim, who joins us from Beirut. Rami, bring us up to date with today's strikes. What more can you tell us?
The Israelis struck across South Lebanon today, as they have yesterday and for the past since this latest round of escalation began. We have not received accurate casualty figures yet from the Lebanese Ministry of Health, but we saw the state news agency saying that one person was killed in one airstrike on a car in one area, and that two rescuers were injured in another strike. Local media are talking about a third strike, which they say has led to the death of 6 people, including a woman and a child, but we have not yet received confirmation on this from the Lebanese Health Ministry or from state media. It's just several local media reporting that strike so far. And as you mentioned, of course, Hezbollah has been striking back at Israeli forces inside Lebanon today. All of the attacks they spoke about, many of them were on the town of Bayyada. This is a coastal town in the south of Lebanon. Hezbollah announced that they used drones, the FPV drones that you mentioned, to attack these Israeli forces in Bayyada. They also announced that as they were resisting the advance of an Israeli force, which is trying to reach a strategic hilltop, they targeted that force with an improvised explosive device, and that they managed to hit that force and cause casualties. And they announced several other operations, some of them with missiles, some of them with artillery rounds, against Israeli forces in different parts of South Lebanon.
What does this mean for the ceasefire going forward, do you think?
I think the main thing about the ceasefire is that it doesn't really exist. It's something that the Americans talk about and that the Lebanese delegation to Washington has spoken about quite puzzlingly. With a sense of triumph, they said that there was some sort of diplomatic breakthrough in favor of Lebanon. The ceasefire does not exist. The only thing maybe that still exists is some kind of the fact that Beirut is not being hit the way it was hit about a month ago, and with only one exception so far, an assassination attempt, or which may have been successful by the Israelis a few days back. So Beirut, and including the southern suburbs of Beirut, have been out of the picture in terms of war almost throughout the entire so-called ceasefire. That's it. And Hezbollah has made the point of saying that they will not return to a situation in which the Israelis are attacking and they're not doing anything, which was the situation for 15 months prior to this latest round of escalation.
Rami, thank you. That's our correspondent, Rami Rahayem in Beirut there. Thank you for that. Iran's state media says the United States has failed to make any concrete concessions in its latest response to Iran's proposals to restart peace talks. One report said Washington was demanding that Iran close all but one of its nuclear sites and transfer its stockpile of highly enriched uranium to the US. It said Washington was also refusing to release even a quarter of Iran's frozen assets. The US is yet to confirm the details of the proposals. Meanwhile, the US President Donald Trump has threatened consequences for Iran if its leaders do not act quickly. For Iran, the clock is ticking and they better get moving fast or there won't be anything left of them. Time is of the essence, he wrote in a Truth Social post. Meanwhile, Iran's Speaker of Parliament, who's emerged as the chief negotiator with the United States, has been appointed to also oversee relations with China. Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf's appointment comes days after President Trump's visit to Beijing, where he claimed Xi Jinping had offered him help in opening the Strait of Hormuz, as well as assurances he wouldn't send military aid to Iran. Well, Beijing is proving an important player in the diplomatic relations surrounding the Iran war, as my colleague Kasha Madira explains.
Oil lies at the heart of China's relationship with Iran. Before the war, for every 10 barrels of oil that Iran exported, China bought 9 of them. And for all that oil, Iran received tens of billions of dollars annually, which accounts for just under half of Iran's government budget. So trade is at its heart, but the relationship between Tehran and Beijing has actually evolved over decades to a broad strategic partnership covering not just trade, but also security and diplomacy. Now, although China has avoided formal defense commitments to Iran, 5 years ago, it gave Iran full military access to its homegrown Beidou satellite navigation system. And the US has accused China of enabling Iran to access export-controlled dual-use technology, which is needed for drone and weapons programs. Since the Islamic Revolution, the US has led efforts to isolate Iran on the world stage. China, however, has facilitated its entrance into alternative institutions like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in 2023. And that's not the only way that China's attitude to Iran diverges from the US. Beijing condemned the killing of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and called for the immediate cessation of US-Israeli strikes. And although China does oppose Iran developing nuclear weapons, it supports its right to a civilian nuclear energy program.
My colleague Kasha Madeira there. Well, I'm now joined by BBC Persian's Kazra Naji. And Kazra, a lot is being said about Mohammed Bagher Ghalibaf, who is the Speaker of Parliament, a chief negotiator for Iran in this conflict. And over the weekend, he's also been meeting Pakistan's Interior Minister. Of course, Pakistan is mediating in this conflict.
That's right. Pakistani Interior Minister is in Iran, has been meeting with the Iranians. We don't know what has been discussed, but generally they're saying that they're discussing the diplomatic efforts by Pakistan to bring Iran and the US together. That's what they've been doing. As far as Mr. Ghalibaf is concerned, he's rising in the pecking order of the Iranian leadership. And the latest is that by the proposal of the president and the approval of Iran's supreme leader, he has been put in charge of the file with China, i.e. he's the go-between between Iran and China. And don't forget that China, after President Trump's visit, is keen to play a role, and they want to know who in Iran they would talk to.
Yes, and just going back to one of the other key developments there, which is this drone strike in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi. It's still unclear what has happened here.
No, it's not clear. And the UAE has just issued a statement saying that 3 drones were fired towards the nuclear power plant. 2 of them were shot down, and the 3rd hit the ground within the vicinity, within the compound. They're saying that they came from the west of the country. That could be either from Iran or from the Houthis. But obviously the main suspect is Iran, and the relations between Iran and the UAE is at rock bottom after the war. And Iran fired about 3,000, according to the UAE, 3,000 missiles and drones at UAE during that time. So things are not going very well with these two countries, and this is the latest. I suppose this is a message from Iran, if Iran is behind it, that UAE should not get involved in this war any further.
And let's go back to those efforts to restart peace talks. We've seen the media in Iran, state media, blaming Washington for not being serious about their proposals. President Trump has now posted saying that the clock is ticking for Iran. What does all of this mean?
Well, it means that the channel through Pakistan is still open, by the way. And the latest from Iran is that Iran has put forward to the Pakistanis for passing on to the US its latest proposals. So that was last night. We haven't heard anything from the American side as opposed on the issue of what's in that. We know that President Trump has just tweeted saying, sent a message on Truth Social saying that the clock is ticking and that this is a calm before the storm. We have to wait and see whether this diplomatic channel is still something to pin hopes on in terms of calm and peace and prevention of the resumption of the war between Iran and the US.
Kazra, thank you. That's BBC Persian's Kazra Naji here in the studio with us. Well, whether you are joining us on YouTube, TikTok, Sounds, radio or TV, thanks for your time. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the Iran War Today.